Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to today's book reading for spiritual hygiene. Again, we are doing a reread. Last week's apparently did not come out legibly or audibly, rather, not legibly, audibly. And so we're having to redo last week's reading. We've had to do that a few times. I didn't realize sometimes I don't go back and watch afterwards to see what the sound sounds like. And I went ahead and produced it and found that the sound was not up to par. And so, I couldn't even understand what was being read. And so I'm having to go back and reread chapter 15, spiritual hygiene or actually, no, it's chapter 16 that we're reading this week that we read last week. Spiritual hygiene for relationships. I want to say, actually, I'm so sorry. Let me find out what was read last week, because I think we did the parenting, and then we did the introduction. So this was for last week was for relationships, I want to say. Chapter 16 is what we read last week. I'm sorry, you guys. Your girl be doing so much. We got to keep it going here. So maybe it was just me. Maybe when I went to listen to it, it was a connection issue, because I had believed that I needed to go back and redo the last chapter I did, which was apparently chapter 15, but now when I listen to it, it sounds clear. So, okay. I guess I feel good about that because I don't have to go back and redo what I've already done. So I had made it private, but I went back and made it available because it's playing just fine now. We are in Mercury retrograde. Sometimes that does mess with the equipment, the electronics. I guess that's maybe what's happening. And so, yeah, so it's good. I'm going to keep it and we're going to move forward. Yay, I feel really good about that. I don't have to go back and reread or spend more time redoing what we've already dedicated time to. And so let's move forward. That was chapter 15, spiritual hygiene as it relates to parenting. Now we're going to go into spiritual hygiene as it relates to relationships. This is going to be good. I've been looking forward to this chapter. And this is all about clearing the mirror, honoring the bond, like understanding. When we talk about mirrors, we're talking about understanding that when we're looking at each other, we're really mirroring each other. We're really looking at aspects of ourselves as we're looking outside of ourselves, certain aspects of looking within. There's a reflection that's being cast when we're looking outside of ourselves, understanding that part of our perspective and, applying that, understanding that as we look at our relationships. And so we're going to go ahead and get into this. But before we do, as we always do, we're going to go into a deep level of reverence for what we are about to share, what we are about to embark upon, that we would be able to understand how it relates to us personally and collectively, what we can take away to apply to our lives, how we can be open and receptive and allow it to change our lives. Okay. And so let's just take a moment. Welcome to Blood Moon Oracle. My name is Leticia. Let's take a moment to go ahead and position ourselves to receive this through meditation, through prayer, through a moment of stillness and presence, and through the energy of silence, that we would be able to hear what Spirit is saying through this chapter 16. Okay, so welcome. If you're new here, feel free, if this resonates, if this is something that is up your alley, right? Like, share, comment, subscribe. If you want to follow along, if you choose to go and grab the book, it is Spiritual Hygiene by Ayanla Bonzant. Very beautiful soul. I just love her energy. What she is called to do has a great impact on us as a whole. It gives everyone an opportunity to assume responsibility, right? And so this is beautiful. This is something I feel like we definitely need in today's time. As things become more, and I'm going to even say unstable, it is really incumbent upon us to find stability within ourselves so that we're not rocked and shifted and tossed to and from by what's happening in the world and possibly what's happening right around us. But it really is a call to assume responsibility for self. And she calls it a practical path for clean living, inner authority, and divine freedom, all of the above and some more. And so as we go into meditation, I want you to really posture yourself to receive, to be open. And even if you don't agree with everything that we share when we read through these chapters, some of it is experiential, some of it is through her research, some of it is very practical, things that can help us in everyday living. But all of it is meant to impact us in a positive way, to empower us to live purpose-filled lives. And so as we go into this, just posture yourself to open your heart and receive, okay? Ask Spirit, if this is for you, how you can take this information and not just receive it, but integrate it into your life, how it can be helpful. As we begin, beloved presence of light and order, I welcome you into every space where my feet walk, into every task that my hands complete, and into every word I speak in service. Let this day, this desk, this duty become an altar of sacred offering. Let what I touch be touched by peace. Let what I create carry the vibration of clarity and alignment. Where distortion seeks to distract, I act to remain anchored. Where dysfunction speaks loudly, I ask to answer only to truth. Where power is misused, I will remember. I am governed by the divine. I affirm that no title is greater than my calling. No office is stronger than my alignment. No system can silence the soul that knows its source. I declare, in this workplace, I bring light without aggression. I uphold boundaries without apology. I stand in sacred clarity without needing to be understood. Spirit, sanctify the unseen places, the meetings, the decisions, the conversations. Let me be a living sanctuary. Let this space be a place of right action, right speech, and right rhythm. May I serve without self-betrayal. May I lead without distortion. May I shine without shrinking. I am here. I am clean. I am whole. I walk this day in alignment with the divine. Amen. Ashe, Ao, and so it is. Woo-hoo. I get excited. Oh, that just touched a very deep place within me. That resonated very deeply within me. Yeah, there's just something that is different when you desire to be righteous for all the right reasons, not for religious pretense or for acceptance, but just because you want to make a difference, you want to be effective, you want to make an impact. That just hits different. So as we begin, again, thank you for stopping by. I hope you are enjoying this book. It has been so fulfilling and just so impactful. Yeah. Chapter 16 is about spiritual hygiene for relationships. And it's about clearing the mirror and honoring the bond. Okay. So it starts off with her talking about Elena and her sister growing up like two branches of the same tree, intertwined by blood, yet bit by different winds. In their childhood, they whispered secrets under the covers and defended each other in the schoolyard. By the time they were grown, a strange silence had taken root between them. Elena couldn't quite name the moment this distance began. Maybe it was when her sister didn't come to their father's funeral, or maybe it was the years of "I'm fine" masking deeper wounds. They text occasionally, birthdays, emergencies, but the warmth between them had cooled. The thread remained, but it was frayed. One day, during the healing cycle, Elena was guided to close her eyes and ask her heart, what am I carrying in my relationship with my sister that does not belong to me? The image came fast, a cracked mirror. Her sister's sorrow, her own silence, the unspoken disappointments. And suddenly the message was clear. She was tending to the connection through the lens of unresolved pain, unclear expectations, and emotional inheritance. The love they shared had not faded. The honesty, and clarity between them had. Spiritual hygiene for relationships is the intentional practice of tending to the energy, emotions, and unspoken dynamics between yourself and others with clarity, honesty, and a sense of presence. It is the soul's commitment to show up clean rather than contaminated, and to relate from truth, not trauma. Spiritual hygiene is a devotional way of being in connection with clarity, compassion, truth, and tenderness. It is what allows intimacy to be safe, sacred, and sustainable. Spiritual hygiene for relationships involves consistent, conscious clearing of emotional residue, energetic projection, and inherited relational patterns, allowing love, truth, and presence to thrive in the space between souls. Practicing spiritual hygiene will not make you perfect. That's not what this is about. It won't make you perfect in a relationship. It will, however, support you in becoming and being spiritually accountable and responsible for how you show up in loving, befriending, partnering, and relating. Let me read that again. It will, however, support you in becoming and being spiritually accountable and responsible for how you show up in loving, in befriending, in partnering, and in relating. Relationships do not fall apart overnight. They unravel silently, thread by thread, when things like boundaries are not named. A feeling remains unspoken. A resentment is tucked beneath a smile. A need is disguised as a demand, or a silence is mistaken for peace. Without spiritual hygiene, these small threads become knotted entanglements, emotional buildup, invisible walls. Spiritual hygiene clears those threads before they become thorns. It brings us back to presence, so we stop relating from our past and start relating from our power. It facilitates the embodiment of the principles and practices required to live the theory, so that what we know becomes an essential part of who we are and who we are becoming. The next part is called Drift from soul to survival. Most of what has been offered here in these chapters is something a majority of people already know. Some parts of us really know what is required for open-minded, heart-centered, clean living. We have heard about it. We may have even briefly practiced some aspects of it. The principles and practices of spiritual hygiene in every area of our lives. Then life happens. We get busy, our wounds get triggered, the voices of personal and collective trauma rise up like a storm, hissing, screaming, demanding attention, drowning out the gentle whisper of the soul. A family member or social leader disappoints us. A partner or friend betrays our trust. Financial strain pulls us from a place of divine trust into a state of human desperation. News headlines and social media streams flood our senses with fear, loss, and despair, dimming our hope in humanity's unfolding. Stimulated by third-dimensional sensory-driven reality, we begin scrambling to fix our lives. We teach outward, attempting to control the chaos. We forget the sacred power and innate wisdom within. In our forgetting, we lose connection to the very thing we long for most, the intimacy of love. The intimacy of loving, fulfilling, and spiritual aligned relationships. In the midst of our pain and distortions, trust becomes a demand rather than a devotion. Faith is reduced to a desperate spiritual construct, only activated when hit rock bottom. Love becomes a transaction, a memory, or for some, a mirage. We believe we are broken. The truth is, we are just tired. In fact, some are mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted. We are trying to survive in a world that keeps pulling us away from our center. When we disconnect from our inner temple, we begin to pollute our outer relationships. The divine learning curriculum encoded into every challenge gets lost. The sacred mirror each person provides is fogged. The spiritual hygiene that keeps our connection clean, whole, and rooted in truth becomes a luxury only some can afford rather than a necessity that we all must embrace. The next section says what spiritual hygiene is and is not. The practice and embodiment of spiritual hygiene, whether in relationships or any other area of life, does not mean we will forget the pain we've endured. It means we stop judging that pain as wrong or unnecessary. It does not mean the scars of our wounds will vanish. It does not mean the scars of our wounds will vanish. It means we stop picking at them until they bleed into the present moment, straining our new beginnings and with old residue. Spiritual hygiene may not give us whiter teeth or fresher breath, but it will restore the sacred breath of truth, love, and integrity into our relationships. I love that. Spiritual hygiene is not necessarily going to beautify the outside of the body, but it will make the inside more whole and our connections, right, more attainable, the peace and the love that we desire. It reminds us you have the power, you have the responsibility. You are the temple and the keeper of its fire. Through the daily tending of your heart, your boundaries, your truth, and your energy, you become a clean vessel through which your relationships, romantic, familial, platonic, and communal, can flourish because your inner altar creates the outer atmosphere. Every relationship you experience is shaped by the state of your inner altar. Your unspoken thoughts, your unreleased grief, your hidden longings may not be invisible. Yet they are felt, experienced. They are felt and experienced. Spiritual hygiene calls you to tend to that inner space with tenderness, awareness, and love, so that when life happens again, and it will, You won't forget who you are, expecting someone else to remember on your behalf. Instead, you will return to your inner center. You will remember the truth of your sacred identity. You will reset and align. You will relate from a place that is whole. I love this. The next part says core elements of spiritual hygiene for relationships. Okay. The first one is energetic awareness. Recognizing when the emotional atmosphere between you and another feels heavy, unclear, or changed. Once you become aware, you must choose not to ignore it. The awareness is something is disturbing the energy in our field. Let's love each other enough to clear it. Okay. The next one is emotional ownership. Accepting full responsibility for your inner experience, your triggers, your needs, your history without assigning blame. It is having the courage and willingness to say, I feel disappointed, and I want to share that with honesty, not as accusation. Yes. The next one is open-hearted communication, replacing assumptions, expectations, and silence with clarity and truth. It means owning and speaking. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I need. Can we talk about it together? Open-hearted communication. The next one is discernment and boundaries, knowing when to lean in, when to relate, and when a connection is no longer in alignment with your soul. Offering feedback with compassion and concern, and honoring requests for time or space before pressing or leaning in. It is a delicate balance between knowing what is needed and knowing when it is not appropriate to address the need. It is a recognition that I bless our bond, and I also honor that I need space for my truth to breathe and be expressed. Okay. Discernment and boundaries. The next one is ancestral and pattern clearing. Noticing when you are reenacting inherited dynamics and choosing not to repeat them. This is a call for inner authority to step in and restore alignment and balance. This reaction feels familiar. It's not just mine. It is my mother's or father's. It is history. I release it now. Relationships are like temples. Spiritual hygiene is the practice of maintaining a clean altar. Unspoken pain in a relationship becomes energetic clutter. Clear it with courage. Silence disguised as peace becomes emotional avoidance. Speak with clarity. Choose honesty over hiding. Overgiving eventually becomes martyrdom. True love honors reciprocity, not depletion. Emotional withdrawal is not protection. It is energetic pollution. Return to presence. Expecting others to read our mind is not a sign of intimacy. It is unresolved fear. Ask, speak, reveal, repeat. Okay. Somebody may need to ask more than once. When you swallow your truth to maintain peace, you create inner turmoil. Love does not require that you sacrifice yourself. It asks for the presence of your soul. Every soul you connect with is impacted by the vibration of your being. Keep your mental, emotional, and physical being clean. Make yourself holy. Okay. And then we go into the fact that all relationships are mirrors that reflect our inner climate. The quality of your relationships is not measured by how long they last. It is evidenced by how clean, clear, and conscious you are within them. If your soul is evolving, but your relationships are not, tension will arise. Without good spiritual hygiene, relationships can quickly deteriorate into obligation, emotional pollution, or energetic codependency. You may assume the relationship or the other person is the problem. That would be an inaccurate assumption. What you are experiencing is divine alignment knocking on your door. There is something you need to clean up or clear out. When you practice spiritual hygiene in relationships, you stop waiting to be affirmed acknowledged, or chosen, and start choosing yourself with love, clarity, and sacred boundaries. Spiritual hygiene provides you with relational discernment, teaching you when to draw closer, when to release, and how to remain rooted in love, regardless of the circumstances. Relationships are sacred mirrors and classrooms. They may not always reflect who we are, but they always reveal what we carry consciously or unconsciously. Where there is poor spiritual hygiene in relationships, we will experience and express. The first thing is emotional projection rather than presence. Emotional projection rather than presence. When the wound speaks louder than awareness. Emotional projection occurs when we assign someone a script they never agreed to perform. It is when we don't just feel our feelings, we assign them to someone else. In response, our pain becomes a lens through which we misread the moment, misinterpret the other, and mistake reaction for reality. Instead of meeting others with our truth and presence, we meet them with the echoes of our past. A friend cancels a call and we feel abandoned, not because of the disappointment or lack of contact, but because of the childhood wound it conjures. A partner sets a boundary and we feel unloved, not because of the line they have drawn, but because our nervous system equates no with rejection. A loved one is distracted and we feel dismissed, not because they aren't listening, but because an old story says, I'm not worthy of attention. The experience reflects back to us what remains unprocessed, which we project onto the other person. What we suppress within, we assign without. And spiritual hygiene in relationships brings us to ourselves with the awareness, honesty, and clarity that says, this belongs to me, that belongs to them. Presence is rooted, calm, curious. Projection is reactive, charged, and accusatory. Emotional projection leads to unclean, often ineffective communication. It muddles the space between you and the other person with the echoes of residue of past experiences. This is the result of denying, avoiding, and suppressing our feelings. When we don't take time to feel, we force others to carry what we have not claimed or cleared. To be fully present in the moment of a relationship, we must be willing to slow down and clear our emotional lens before responding. When we are aware of, honest, and present with ourselves in a relationship, we ask, what am I feeling right now? What is true in this moment? What does this remind me of? When we are projecting, we assume, you're ignoring me. You are trying to hurt me. You never listen. You always leave. You don't care, right? So one is open-hearted awareness. The other is emotional storytelling disguised as intuition. When you choose to pause and check in with your truth before reacting, you intercept the old scripts that trauma has rehearsed. You stop assigning blame to others for wounds they did not create. You accept responsibility for your internal landscape. You practice somatic stewardship that has been disrupted and disturbed. In this way, you become the healer of your own heart. You bring yourself back into alignment with your soul, okay? And so emotional projection is not always evidence of a bad or dysfunctional relationship. It is simply a signal that your heart is asking to be witnessed by you before it is seen or held by another. To practice spiritual hygiene in a relationship is to make the commitment that I will not blame you for my pain by calling it your fault. I will meet you with clarity, not contamination. I will be here now with all of me clean, conscious, and clear. This is a great time to just take a sacred pause. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. Good information. Somatic stewardship. So before responding to a moment of emotional charge in a relationship, some things that we can do is pause, just stop for a minute. Breathe deeply into our belly, into your womb, your gut. And then ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? What story am I telling myself about this feeling? Is this response about this moment or another moment I've never fully felt or allowed myself to fully feel? And then speak to yourself aloud, or it could be silently, and just say, I choose presence over projection. I return to the truth of this moment. I do not ask another to build what I have not honored in myself. All right. Breathe through it. All right, let's move on. The next part says passive blame rather than active communication. The withheld voice. James and Aisha had been married for 14 years. They knew each other's rhythms, who made the coffee, who took the trash out, and when to be silent and listen. Lately, a quiet tension lived between them. Asia felt unsupported. She was overwhelmed at work and struggling to cope with too much at home. Instead of saying, I need help, she did everything with extra force, washing the dishes loudly, over-explaining her exhaustion to friends, living or leaving articles about burnout on the table. James sensed something was wrong, but didn't know how to approach it. One night he said, I'm not a mind reader. Asia snapped back, exactly, that's the problem. Passive blame had entered their relationship like a fog. The stench of it was numbing truth and clouding their connection. Each type of relationship had unique spiritual requirements. Intimate relationships demand emotional transparency. Marriages require energetic renewal. Friendships need recalibration over time. James did not need any more guessing. He needed a transparent, energetic renewal that would recalibrate his connection to his friend, lover, and wife. Asia needed to step into active communication, born of spiritual responsibility. Passive blame is one of the most subtle, corrosive energies in relationships. It does not speak clearly or directly. It sighs, it withdraws, it slams cabinet doors and cancels plans without explanation. It posts cryptic messages online. It expects others to read pain like a script and fix what was never said aloud. Passive blame is the art of implication. It says, you should have known instead of, this is what I need. It punishes rather than expresses. It waits to be rescued instead of asking to be seen. Passive blame is the energy of, I'm mad at you, but I won't tell you why. It avoids discomfort by creating confusion. It seeks change without clarity. Where passive blame lives, connection cannot breathe. At its core, passive blame is not a result of laziness or manipulation. It is a trauma-informed adaptation. It is the survival response of someone who learned early on that being direct or honest was not safe. It is the residue of environments where truth was punished, emotion was dismissed, or requests were not met. Or requests were met with rejection, ridicule, or silence. Passive blame contaminates the field between two souls with silence, expectation, and invisible punishments. It is a form of energetic dishonesty where truth is felt but not spoken. It places the burden of healing on the other while withholding the map of how to get to the healing by the shortest route. Spiritual hygiene calls us into active communication, clear, respectful, rooted in present truth, not historical pain. Passive blame often begins in childhood where emotional honesty was either ignored, stop crying, you're too sensitive, or it was punished, don't talk back. That's disrespectful. It was minimized. It's not that big of a deal. You're overreacting. Or it was shame. Look what you made me do. Why can't you just behave? From this, a child learns that it is not safe to speak up or that expressing needs leads to disconnection. There is always an echo, a subconscious belief fueling passive blame. If I say what I really feel, I'll be hurt, rejected, or ignored. It's better to hint, withhold, or act it out because asking directly never works. As the child matures, the belief remains rooted. So the adult withdraws instead of expressing. They let things go that are still festering. They believe others should know because they do not feel safe enough to ask. They feel unseen, but never risk fully being visible. This belief keeps them emotionally protected, but spiritually polluted. If I'm honest, I'll be dismissed, blamed, or abandoned. I must protect myself by staying silent, withdrawing, or implying, never asking directly. This trauma voice becomes a relational blueprint carried into adulthood. Passive blame is a protective strategy, a quiet attempt to preserve dignity without risking exposure. Protection, when rooted in fear, becomes a prison. Until the voice is reclaimed, truth remains buried. Until presence replaces projection, resentment grows. Until the core belief is healed, communication will always carry the scent of fear. Passive blame sounds like this. You should have known I was upset, or whatever, it's fine, or I'll just do it myself. It could be unreturned calls, sharp silences, unconsciously dramatic distance. But active communication sounds like this. I felt hurt when you didn't follow through. Can we talk about it? Right now I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need your support. Or I notice I've been withdrawing. I think there's something I need to share. Active communication is not just about words, it's about energetic cleanliness and speaking the truth before it festers into bitterness. Spiritual hygiene for relationships is not just about the clearing of your inner world, it is about the cleansing of the space between you and another person. When your energy is clean, your communication becomes a sacred offering. No longer cloaked in manipulation, fear, or avoidance, your words become a mirror of your alignment. To practice active communication is to honor both your truth and the person in front of you. It is to speak from awareness rather than pain, from clarity rather than confusion, from love rather than protection. When communication is stagnant, unclear, or manipulative, energetic cords become tangled. Resentment quietly festers. Assumptions replace understanding. Silence becomes punishment. And truth is buried beneath performance or pride. This is emotional debris that not only destroys relationships, but it reinforces the very belief that creates the problem in the first place. Spiritual hygiene for relationships involve clearing the debris from sacred space. When you withhold truth to keep the peace, you are not protecting the relationship. You are suffocating it. Spiritual hygiene calls you to name the unseen, to bring shadow into light. Active communication is spiritually responsible speech that becomes the lifeblood of the relationship. When it is present, everything in and about the relationship flows. Those in the relationship feel safe. Most importantly, the people involved know that even when it is not easy, they will have all the information they need to make self-honoring, self-supportive choices. And they offer the same to the other person. I love that. Active communication is direct without being sharp. It is honest without being harsh. It is vulnerable without requiring self-abandonment. It is expressive without expectation of control. It is not about being right. It's about being real and honest. And it is not about external validation, it is about sacred presence. Active communication clears the relational field by offering and receiving. This is what I feel. This is what I need. This is what I'm willing to do. And this is what I'm no longer available for. In all relationships, think of your words as incense and consider, what energy are my words carrying? Are they clouded with accusation or scented with sincerity? Active communication becomes a spiritual hygiene ritual in your relationship when you take a breath before speaking and have the intention to connect rather than conquer. Your relationship temple stays clean when you take responsibility for your emotions and leave the room for others to respond. Okay, I love this. Next, we have unspoken resentment grows into energetic debt. Wow. Unspoken resentment grows into energetic debt. That sounds costly. When silence becomes the weight love cannot carry. Ooh. Selma and Mara had been close for nearly a decade. Sisters not by blood, but by bond. They laughed loud and often, traveled together, held space for one another's pain, celebrated life's seasons. Selma walked behind Mara through her divorce. Mara had stood behind Selma at her mother's funeral. They were connected at the hip, and then slowly something changed. It did not happen in one moment. There were many, often unnoticed, some unspoken moments, and many small things. Selma began to notice that Mara never asked about her new business. She showed up late to plan meetings and outings. She seemed distant when Selma spoke of her growth, discoveries, or new interests she was developing. Over time, Selma felt herself shrinking. She stopped sharing her wins. She justified Mara's distance with spiritual logic. Oh, she's probably going through something. But truthfully, she was hurt. Mara never said anything unkind, nor did she say, I see you, I hear you, I am with you anymore. Selma began to carry a quiet grief. She missed her friend and did not know or understand where she had gone. She offered Mara support out of habit. She answered Mara's requests, even when she was tired. Selma avoided asking Mara for help because she no longer felt safe to need anything in her presence. She ignored little slights. Or said, it's okay, when it wasn't. Month after month, the space between them grew heavy, not with arguments, but with unspoken expectations, swallowed disappointments, and invisible debts. One of the new interests Selma had embraced that Mara seemed to care nothing about was meditation. Selma had crafted a beautiful practice she engaged in every morning. One day, after a particular sweet session, Selma was writing in her journal when she heard the words rise in her spirit. You are carrying Mara in a way she never asked you to. More than that, you are carrying the weight of what you never said. Selma wept, not because of Mara's actions, but because of her own silence, the way she had given without request or requirement, the way she had assumed instead of expressing, the way she had spiritualized her own self-abandonment, called it love, and blamed the lack of reciprocity on her friend, whom she loved dearly. Taking responsibility for herself and her feelings, Selma wrote a letter, one she would not send to Mara. It was a letter of release. Dear Mara, I've been giving from a place of fear, not fullness. I've been withholding my truth to preserve our bond. I now realize that I have created a debt between us that you were never aware of. I release it. I bless us both. I come home to my voice. I cancel the contract of silent suffering. I reclaim my clarity. I restore energetic balance. I ask for and claim your forgiveness. All is now clear between us. She burned the letter, placed her hand over her heart, and prayed for herself and then Mara. Within a few hours, she felt the shift. She knew the field between her and Mara had cleared. Mara remained in her life, but the emotional grip was gone. Selma no longer overgave. She said no when it felt right. She no longer overexplained or overexpected. She still loved Mara, but now she loved with clean hands and a clean heart. Selma had practiced good spiritual hygiene. She realized that just as she cared for her body, she had to tend to the emotional and spiritual currents she brought into her connection with others. She also realized that what she was feeling was her business and her responsibility to handle. Every relationship is sacred. However, not every relationship is meant to be permanent. That's big. I'm going to say that again. Every relationship is sacred. However, not every relationship is meant to be permanent. Every relationship has a lesson. Often the lesson is that we can love someone deeply and dearly, but not everyone we love is meant to be our life's companion. Spiritual hygiene teaches us discernment from which we learn who carries a shared frequency and who carries a shared wound. Some relationships are soul contracts meant for deep karmic clearing. Others are divine appointments, momentary but transformative. Some are covenant relationships, those built for longevity, devotion, and soul growth. Others may be residue relationships, held together only by guilt, obligation, or unhealed patterns. Spiritual hygiene for relationships does not demand that we love everyone the same. It asks that we love ourselves enough to honor each relationship as it truly is, not what we wish it to be. Friendships may and must shift over time. Spiritual hygiene asks us to allow that to unfold without guilt or clinging. A friendship that was sacred for your survival season may not be aligned for your becoming season. With good spiritual hygiene, you will learn what to do and when to do to keep yourself aligned. Ooh, that was a heavy hitter, wasn't it? Talking about connections, relationships, that's deep. And that is definitely something that is so very important, especially in this day and time. We are so disconnected, not only from others, but even from ourselves. When we look at the relationships and the rate of, broken contracts when it comes to relationships, it boils down to spiritual hygiene. Either we have not loved ourselves first and then allowed ourselves to love others out of our own love, or there has been some breakdown in how we have connected with others. And like she was saying in this book, sometimes we try to measure relationships by the value of the relationships, or, by the length of the relationship. Just because you've been connected with somebody for 10 years does not mean that it's aligned. That could have been a rough 10 years, a very undesirable 10 years. Can you imagine being connected to somebody, and it could be marriage, it could be friendship, it could be family, and just having such a draining experience every time you're with that person, as opposed to being with somebody that lifts your spirits. Every time you have an encounter with somebody, you walk away feeling lifted, more expansive, more fulfilled. But having to deal with the very opposite. Every time you deal with somebody, you feel drained, you feel restricted, that the relationship actually drains you of life, right? That is not aligned. Just because you've dealt with this for 10 years does not mean that it's aligned, right? I'd rather have fruitful relationships that last a month, that provide some level of experience, right? That is connecting me to my higher path, right? Even if it's just meeting people every other, ever so often, and having them pass through my life, but contributing something valuable to my life. And then understanding that it's time to move on. It's time to let go and move to the next, right? as opposed to trying to cling and hold on to something and make it into something that it's not, that it's never going to be. Spiritual hygiene teaches us the lessons around loving ourselves. And that's what that means. It's loving ourselves enough to understand that we are the root where all of these relationships start. And the responsibility, it has always been with us, right? I love the last story that she told between Mara and Selma, how it was kind of one-sided. Like sometimes we enter into these relationships and they become wounded connections because there's unfair expectations. That happens in relationships too. We put the responsibility on the other person, unfair responsibilities, right? Just because you're a massive giver and you get a lot of fulfillment around giving, the person you're connected to may not. And it would be unfair for you to expect you out of them. That's why I always say, happiness is an inside job. Your contentment is your responsibility. And before going to commit to a connection with someone else, you have to be okay with you so that you don't walk into that relationship expecting someone to fix you or to fix your situation or to come in and address an issue that you actually need to address. And when you fix that or address that, you'll be okay with or without the connection, with or without the relationship. That is a byproduct of your happiness. You connecting with people on a higher, more fulfilling level is a byproduct of you connecting with yourself. If you're disconnected from yourself, there's no way that you can have a fulfilling connection with anybody else. You're not even connected with yourself. And so good stuff. This is good stuff here. And this is right where I am right now. These are some lessons that definitely hit home for me. And the beautiful thing is when you are aware of these lessons, when they're hitting home, when you're going through them, it's like, oh, I know what this is. I get a chance to exercise this, what I've learned in real time, and to be aware of it as well. There's something going on with my lash. I'm going to take these off. But that's the beautiful thing about this. And so I really, really appreciate this. Thank you so much, Ayanla. That's our lesson for today. Let me know how you feel, if this related, and how it resonates with your life. If you want to share, feel free to leave comments below. Thank you guys for stopping by again, for those of you that's hanging in there with me. And we will see you next week. My name is Leticia. The channel is Blood Moon Oracle. Even though we were here in a different capacity, I should have changed my little banner over. I forgot, but that's okay. It's all good, right? And so we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for stopping by and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.